You're listening to SpectraCast, the show where I get behind the scenes on diversity and inclusion. I'll be talking to a number of people who have taken steps towards greater inclusion of others, and also with those who have benefited from being included in the workplace. Whilst my bias might be towards recruiting and retaining neurodiverse people, I'll also explore practical approaches to being more inclusive overall. Hi, I'm your host Chris Turner, and I've made it my mission to help employers to embrace and reap the rewards of being more inclusive of neurodiversity. In doing so, I hope to do my little part in ensuring more neurodiverse people get the same opportunities and choices as everyone else when it comes to work and employment. So, if you're curious and want to learn from those who are doing it, and you favour action over inaction, then stick around. Today I'm sitting down with Laurel Lau, an innovation consultant and leadership coach, and we talk all things innovation, creativity, and neurodiversity. So sit back, relax, and hope you enjoy the show. So thanks for joining me this morning, Laurel. Really appreciate you making the time.
Well, I'm excited for this conversation.
It's awesome. That's cool. What I thought would be good to start off with, though, is an introduction to Laurel. Who are you, and what do you do with yourself day to day? So, I've introduced you as a leadership coach and innovation consultant, but what does that look like day to day for you?
Yeah. So for me, I am a leadership coach. So what I've done in the past is really work with clients one-on-one and helping them understand what is their long-term vision and how do they improve their communication. Right now I'm working on actually recruitment for a production project and a couple of different things on the side also. And so it's very dynamic, and I interact with a lot of different types of business owners. And I get to learn about their needs and what they deal with. And
okay, that's cool. And one of the things that I think is going to be interesting, though, is the perspective of your own personal background. Did you want to go into that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So I think there's a lot of misconception of what is neurodivergent. What does it mean to be on the spectrum? And I saw a cousin growing up being diagnosed with dyslexia, but I had no idea that I had something similar. I just thought, well, I couldn't really focus well, but I'm getting great grades except for like 2 classes that I don't like, and it was a huge struggle. It would take me a lot more time to figure out to do a certain task in a certain environment, and I wasn't used to that, putting that much strenuous pain into something that didn't seem normal to me. So I didn't understand why I had that limitation. And as I gotten diagnosed with CAPD, Central Auditory Processing Disorder, as I read through books about it more, there's a book I read called Light, Sound Through Water. I realized it was probably has to do with more repression of creativity. And I realized that the label doesn't mean anything, and that I have to find other ways of getting support rather than talking to psychologists and these education experts, because they're not telling what's the truth, and I can feel it in touch. So then I went on a journey in understanding what does that actually mean about me? Like, what can I find out about myself and my way of learning that's unique, that's different, where can actually produce the most result for employer or my clients. And so that is the journey that I went on after that.
Okay, that's I was actually, just on a side note, you mentioned about the creativity angle, and I was listening to a podcast this morning, and they were talking about how creativity isn't necessarily it's not an epiphany that just jumps on us. It's something that our brain is working on constantly. And it was this dichotomy of left hemisphere, right hemisphere, and it's the right hemisphere that is the one that's making all these seemingly random connections with disaggregated sort of data points. But because the left hemisphere is the one that's like really, it's in the here and now and it's action orientated, until you can quieten that down, you don't get these real creative ideas that come through from the right. And you're talking about that ability to access that creative side of the brain is something that comes more naturally for yourself, at least. And I think it's an interesting perspective for others who are on the spectrum, whether that's a sort of a consistent theme. And what has been your experience with that?
Yeah, I think, so on that note, I think, anything that is labeled a different mind is just because it's happening because there's been a suppression of creativity itself. And you couldn't really look at a person's ability unless you allow them to actually have fun learning, have fun creating. And what actually comes out. And so I was really lucky when I was growing up. I went to 2 kindergartens. I probably had too much energy and my parents don't know what to do with me. Yeah. So I went to 2 kindergartens in Hong Kong. One that was Montessori, which was all about play. Yep. And one that was in Chinese, where we learned all the linguistic skills and everything that's needed. And mm-hmm. So and it was really interesting to go from there into primary school because it was a very different educational system. So I think that it's interesting that we go through these years where the education system doesn't necessarily encourage your creativity in the way that allows one to test and expand those talent zones that kids, and you come to the world being open, and you come to the world with open senses, constantly expressing. And somehow we've learned to stop creating and stop expressing in order to fit in the system. And I know that it's been changing a lot, and there's a lot of support for that. A friend of mine is working for education company that teaches robotics to kids. And so I think that there's a lot that's been changed, but I think that needs to be what we allow our kids to experience. It's not the school's responsibility. It's more of the parents' responsibility to put the kids into the right school, into the right environment, to encourage that. But definitely educational institutions need to take on the responsibility and grooming these young children into being creative leaders of the world tomorrow. Because I think we really depend on the group between I would say 15 to 25 on their creativity, on their ability to change systems. A lot of people in their 30s and 40s need to step back and be able to just support the young ones to be able to create solutions that will allow more disruptions to be introduced into the society itself.
So, and this probably maybe a bit of a good segue actually. So we're talking about there, how do we encourage greater creativity and exploration with the kids. But what kind of environments have you found from a working perspective foster that? And I'm thinking, particularly when we think about, I guess, the creative potential of neurodiverse people, how do we maximise that in the workplace and leverage the sort of the natural capability that a lot of those people are going to bring to the table?
From my experience, small companies were the environment like that I did well in, and or that I have the trust of the client and the boss, where I can actually take charge and be able to create the project and deliver the way that I want. I think that it takes the young person to build up that confidence in order to be able to find the right environment for them. But for me, it's always been a startup environment mostly, where the business value is really high. So actually, in aspect, the inspiration is also relative to that, because you're creating that impact that you can't see in other places.
Okay, so breaking new ground.
Yeah, breaking new ground, like working on projects that creates a big impact in the world, creates such a motivation in everyone to work together in a very different way. So for me, it's been leadership style where it's more flat and people can talk to each other as equals, and a diverse environment where people come from different walks of life, that always help people become a little bit more curious. Monocultures are really hard to break through, just because for me, I've already lived in many different cultures, and so to stay and work in a monoculture is quite challenging, because it's not it's hard to get people to understand your different perspective if they're not expecting it.
Right. Yeah. You mentioned an interesting one before around trust, and I guess paraphrasing, collaboration. How do you feel an employer or a team can help create that kind of the right level of trust?
How do I create the right level of trust? Like how?
Well, how could the employer or how could the team that's looking to support a neurodiverse person creating that environment of trust? Because I've seen that a number of times, and it seems to be such a critical element, but it can also be a tricky one.
Yeah. What have you seen?
That a lack of trust seems to, it's just a real hindrance to open communication and understanding. So as you're saying about being able to actually be yourself and be open about what you're looking for, what's going to work for you, how you want to operate, it does require a fundamental level of trust. But for whatever reason, the conversations and the work that I've done with neurodiverse people is it seems to be kind of, for whatever reason, it seems to be a hard one to create or adapt for them. And I'm not sure which way is that for the individual, or is it coming from the employer? And what's your kind of perspective on that?
On the situation. So.
Yeah, creating that trusting environment. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's really goes top down. Like, I think it needs to be defined from above, like managers and directors, and importance to establish the company as one that's friendly towards people who are on the spectrum. And in these situations where you might have seen someone have different working style and they might not even be on the spectrum.
Yeah.
Right. the lack of understanding and the lack of trust comes from when we're working in situations. I think what comes up for one person comes up for every person in the room. And we are all working together to learn to become better human beings. And I don't think that any one of us is coming from a bad place. And to assume that some of us are coming from a bad place, then it's a horrible world to live in. So,
agreed.
Yeah. So it's important to stand on the side that's of the side of someone's brilliance. And so but that needs to be encouraged throughout the organization, where we learn to talk to each other from understanding each other's brilliance. And in that environment, we can actually create more. And oftentimes it's not that. It's about people become numbers on a spreadsheet. People become their performance metrics, right? Like, so how if we are so focused on that which we define success, we forget the moment in which we're dealing with people themselves who live lives, who has their family. And so you see people at office disconnected with their work, and you can almost see that on LinkedIn also, where talking about your life is a little bit more difficult than talking about what's happening outside in the world, like in the world itself. And there's nothing wrong talking about, and there's nothing wrong with talking about any different subject, but when you're at work and you are disconnected with your own body, you're shutting down your creativity. You're shutting down your way of understanding people from an intuitive wisdom perspective. And that's a lot that we're losing on in terms of tapping into that intelligence, that type of intelligence that comes from creativity that's inspired by nature. And I'm sorry if this is a little bit confusing, but human intelligence is a lot more in the head itself, or it's, how should I say, there's one way of working with the mind, but to be able to take inspiration from more places than just the way that it's been done, the way that it's been, you've been told and you've been asked and you've been trained to see how it works. Inspiration always comes, and when we're facing with challenges that hasn't been faced before, and it's important to be able to tap into that inspiration and create from that place.
So how, because it's really obvious to me anyway that you've got a real passion for the whole innovation, creativity space. How did you end up being a leadership coach and an innovation consultant? What drew you down that path rather than working for the man?
Right. So I was working for engineering firms and startups, and I realized that I didn't necessarily have the room to explore what I can actually fully create. And each project that I would submit that's a little bit beyond the scale of what's been described was faced with challenges, just because it's not been asked. And even though I do it in a way that's gentle, it does raise a lot of eyebrows. There was also no female managers in the company that I was working in a team of 20. So at that time, I just realized for myself, I need to understand my own creativity and not just the analytical part that I've been trained in. This creativity that comes from a different area of my brain, I need to be able to fully embody that and integrate it. And so, because I saw it as two sides of me fighting for working in different areas. And so my solution was to start a lifestyle business and just do coaching for a bit while I refine my different skill sets into becoming one that's holistic as well as analytical. So it was definitely a process to go through. And yeah, there was no easy way about it, because I spent, I would say 16 years only focusing on logic itself. And so, yeah, and I do see that a lot with engineers and people who focus on operationals, and being able to integrate that new side and understand what that means is so important, and being connected to a purpose, staying engaged at work, knowing how to motivate people, knowing how to be a leader, knowing what's the right thing to do in situations you've never been taught to solve, for problems you haven't been taught how to solve. It all comes,
So do you think then that you struggled with being limited in the scope that you had set for you in terms of, developing or designing or considering, a change to a process or designing a new process, and you're sort of railing against that limitation and seeing, well, there's a bigger picture, and how can we actually, consider the greater design, the greater picture, rather than this small part that I've sort of been assigned? Is that what you were having a challenge with?
I think you can describe it in so many different ways, right? I think you cannot fight what's coming in your way and what's showing up in front of you, and you would hear signs of it, whether it's amongst your friends, whether it's from employers, whether it's in your body, whether it's in your head, whether it's in your dreams. Like, it comes to you, and even though each person's on their path, I think we all want to be able to connect better with people, and we all want to create something that is cool and awesome, and we believe in it, and that we can live for it, that we wake up and have fire and passion for our
Absolutely.
work.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So not having, I think, not finding that is a frustration for a lot of people, and that's what makes people become less social and hide in their own corners and not be able to get the support that they want. So, yeah, I mean, when there's a problem in one area of your life, you can't escape whether it's coming up in all areas of your life. Yes. And so to be able to pick one thing and just work on it, it gives you a lot of freedom. And for me, I was working away from home, and I wanted to have that sense of exploration. And so it's so important for me to love the work that I do, so that I can actually explore the world in the way that I want to.
And that's working within the sort of the limitations that you see for yourself, rather than what might be externally imposed. Is that? Yeah.
So it's so as much as I understood about myself and my different talents, I began to see what I can do for individuals and companies. And so, yes, it takes doing the inner work to be able to find that, because oftentimes the answers are showing up in front of us, the problems and the answers are showing up at the same places, but but to be able to see that, to be able to notice it, to be able to hear it, you have to be listening, and you have to be looking and open and receiving a different solution than what you've expected.
And that process of discovery for you, was that something that you did by yourself, or was there someone or a group that you got assistance from? How did that work out for you? Because you did say it took a while, but
yeah. So, I mean, speaking with educational experts did help me in understanding what is what seems to be the problem, right? But through reading books like from Temple Gradlin, and starting with that and understanding, oh wait, I'm just different, so I just need to understand my own perspective. I need to understand my mind. So I became really obsessed with understanding, like, why am I thinking the way that I'm thinking, and knowing how to get clarity of, and how does my perspective come about? When do I trust my perspective? When do I not? So I worked with meditation group, studied meditation for 2 years, and then went on to learning different spiritual modalities and integrating that into my life, and learning to see in different ways. And so I've had help from coaches, from friends, from just different walks of life. It was definitely a very intriguing journey in itself. Met a lot of fascinating people along the way.
I can imagine. But it sounds like, for you at least, having a variety of kind of supports behind you to help guide you on that journey has been really important. So that's a really interesting perspective.
Yeah, I think having that really inspires you to see the world in a different way, and with the world really coming together, and we're at a time where there's so much changes happening, and it's important for us to know how to combine ideas together, and how to combine ideas together, and how to work with people to transform like conflicts into like creativity and innovation. It's about allowing people to see like what's at play really. What are we playing with, and what ideas we're playing with, but also what potentials of people are we playing with. It matters not what people say, but where people speak it from, and from which place that you speak it from, that actually creates more production, more ability to create, just because of this, how should I say, the space from which you create from. Like, that's how ideas get combined, and it's through flowing that inspiration, of which that's natural of your perspective, and each person has their unique, different perspectives, and to be able to be aware of it and articulate it and be comfortable articulating it. That creates an environment where people are actually creating together instead of separately.
And that's when you're going to get the most value out of those ideas. And then, as you say, combining them together, because I can imagine that the challenges that lay before us today, they're only going to become more and more complex as our understanding of problems, and the easy ones are being solved for, and the ones we create for ourselves going forward are going to require greater innovation. They'll be more complex, and the old problems that exist, that are still existing, obviously we haven't cracked the the code to solving for those. So I think you're right, like that, having real diversity of thought in the mix can only be a good thing, surely, to help us get closer to solving those challenges.
Right. And I think those different voices and different perspectives help people see themselves what they actually can bring to the table more than just what they've been asked of. And in the way that they should present, in the way that they should speak. So I think that's the value.
So letting people be themselves and not always feeling the need to fit a particular mold or expectation. Yes, and I what I hear from people is that sometimes they just don't even know how they think and the process that they go through. And so if they're not presenting in the way that is understood and accepted, or they have to go through all these different loops just to be able to communicate something well, we're not doing a good job in being able to hear other people's perspective, right? So it's a two-way street. Everyone has to do their own part, but being able to bring those different voices allows ourselves to be challenged, and that's a great thing to have, to see in different ways of what you can actually bring, what the other team can actually bring. It's not just that person can bring a lot of value. It's what that represents for everyone else also in the room. Yeah, absolutely. So, and how are you finding then the work that you're doing today? What do you mean? The work that you were looking for something that gave you more fulfillment, gave you that opportunity to really express your own creativity. Is that where you're heading now? Is that what you're actually been able to achieve? Yeah, so definitely it's a work in progress. To be able to not see not know the future, not see a future, to trying to see that 3 months ahead, 6 months ahead, 2 years ahead. Yeah. Right. Of the vision of the life that you want to create, the world that you want to live in. So right now where I'm at is, I would say 15-year vision. Yeah. I had to start from zero. So I created business that failed. I've worked on projects that didn't work. I started things, I ended things. It's trial and error. And right now, the projects that I'm working on, I just see a lot more potential for them for creating impact. And I've worked mostly one-on-one before, and I am challenging myself to work in more stressful environments, more dynamic environments where I can interact with more people. And that's going to help me to grow and be able to deliver more. But yeah, I love that I'm challenged, and I love that the place I'm at right now and the place that I'm working towards. I've just recruited someone to be part of my team. Wow, awesome. Yeah. So I'm getting together a team, what I call my tribe, my soul family, of really conscious people that can do work in wellness and really deliver great workshops, great content around education and wellness itself. So it's going to be an epic team, and I'm so excited. It sounds really good. So I guess that then begs a question though, Laurel. If people wanted to work with you, if they wanted to get in touch, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Yeah. So I'm a little bit hidden in terms of one-on-one work right now, but people can find me on Facebook and send me a message, or LinkedIn and send me a message. That is totally fine, and I'll send you a link for a form that people can fill in if they're interested in working.
Awesome. Well, we'll make sure I'll definitely put some links to your Facebook, LinkedIn profiles and the form that you mentioned. We'll put it in the show notes as well. So if people are interested to learn more and to have a conversation with you about how you could potentially help them, then let's make it easy, huh?
Fantastic. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Well, thanks very much, Laurel. I won't hold you up anymore, and I really appreciate your time. I know it's a bit of a tricky time this morning, a bit early, but I think it's been an amazing chat. I think some really great insights from you around the value and benefits of creativity and the places to get it from, or the people we can tap into to really leverage those opportunities. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks very much, Laura. I'll chat to you later.
Sounds good. Bye. Have a good one.
You too. See ya. Thanks for listening to the show. I really hope that you got something out of it and that you feel like you learned something new. If you did find the show helpful, please leave a rating and/or a comment, as it will really help to spread these lessons and insights wider and hopefully inspire more people to take the next step toward creating more inclusive workplaces. Also, if there is a topic or guest that you'd like me to explore or have on the show, drop me an email or reach out on LinkedIn. Your input is what will help keep the show relevant and helpful going forward. So, until next time, let's work together and level the playing field for neurodiverse job seekers.